Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on the Succah daf Lamed Beis. We are going to begin on the very bottom of Lamed Aleph Lamed Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. Quoting the words of the Mishnah at the beginning of the parak, Niktam Rosho. The Mishnah tells us that if a person would entirely cut off the tip of the lulav, that will be an issue. And Rashi says it's possible because it's not hadar. Nifritzu olav puzzle. It says if, let's say, the leaves are removed, it's puzzle. Says Rashi, meshedra from the spine of the lulav, vein mechubarin. They're not attached. El alide aguda kichufya. They're all detached from one another, and you just tie it together like a broom. So that's a problem as well. Nifredu olav, as we saw before in yesterday's daf, that if, let's say, the leaves are just severed, they're not severed completely, they're still attached to the shedra. However, at the top they're severed, they're separated. So that's okay because at least they're attached. At the bottom, Rabbi Yehuda says you should tie it up at the top. Okay, so now let's see the Gemara. Amar Rav Hu in the Loshon El Niktam. The whole issue is if, again, you cut off the tip or the top of the lulav. But nistak kosher. If, let's say, instead it's nistak, that it's separated or it's split, then it's kosher. So the nistak kosher, Vasanya, we learn elsewhere that lulav kofu, if you have a lulav which is bent, and we'll talk about that soon as we continue to Lamed Beis and Aleph, or kabitz, let's say that from the shedra, Rashi says there are these thorns that come out. Sadok, which is what our focus is here, it's split. Akum, it's curved or bent, which we'll talk about more. Dumi lamago, and it has the appearance like a sickle. It's so curved that all these cases is puzzle. Charus, puzzle. If it's dry, it's puzzle. Dumul charus, kosher. However, if it's similar to charios, which means it has the appearance of it, but it's not dry, it's just starting to harden up. However, it's not like wood yet, so therefore it's kosher. So again, the kasha is, we see beferis that sadoik, that if it's split, it's puzzle. So how can we say that the only time it's puzzle if it's niktam, if you mamish cut it off, but nistak is kosher? We see clearly here, nistak or sadok is puzzle. So Rav Nachman, the ovid kihimnik. It depends on what it looks like. If it has the appearance kihimnik, and Rabbeinu Hananel shows a picture of what this is, it almost looks like a pitchfork. It says Rabbeinu Hananel, v'hai desanya tzadik puzzle the ovid kihimnik. If it looks like this pitchfork that is like split, himnik b'loshen arabi levad asyan v'zesu rasai. So this is the appearance. This is what it looks like. So if you can look at the Rabbeinu Hananel, you'll see that if it's split like that, that is when it's puzzle, and that's what it's talking about over here at Sadok. However, if it's just split a bit, but not just like a kahimnik, then it's kosher. And now we're going to dissect what we said before. Okum dum l'magil. So we said that if it's split or bent, and it has the appearance like a sickle, it's puzzle. So Marava lo amaran el lafanav. That's only if it's bent from so much going forward, which is not the way it grows. Avalachara biryasahu. If you find a lulav that it's bent going back, that is the normal way that a lulav often grows, and therefore it's not always straight, and sometimes it is bent backwards. So you can bend backwards, as the expression goes. Rav Nachman stadin kilafanav dami. If, let's say, it's bent to the side, that's like it's in the front, it's a problem. V'yamilal kilacharav dami. So it's a machlokas when it comes to stadin. Yamarava haylava the tzolik b'chad hutza. Balmumhu pasav. Let's say you have a lulav in which all you have is one side of its leaves, and on the other side is nothing. That's considered to be a balmum, and that's not an acceptable lulav. So let's look at TB 13. TB 13 says lulav okum lafanav lacharav ostadav him kosher. So lafanav is pasul. Lacharav, you're allowed to bend backwards. That's how I remember it. Stadim is a machlokas. Weiter. Then when it says nifritzu olav, so if the leaves basically are completely fallen off and then you just tie it up like a broom, that's also possible. So Amar Papa, nifritzu de avikichufya, that you made it like a broom, and that's not acceptable because they're not attached to one another, not attached to the shedra, and therefore that's a problem. Nifradu, however, when it comes to nifradu, it's okay according to the Rabbanan. The ifrud afrudi, it just means that they're partially separated from the others. However, they're still attached at the bottom, and therefore that's something which is still okay. Fine. Because on the bottom, as Rashi says, at the bottom it's still attached, and therefore, since it's still attached to the shedra, it's still kosher. Fine. Fret the Gemara. Boy Rapapa. So Rapapa asked the following question. We know that the middle leaf, the very middle leaf in which tiyomis means twins, but the middle leaf actually has two, you can peel them off, but we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that tiyomis is completely fine. In fact, you often see people when they examine lulavim, they want to check to make sure that the tiyomis is completely attached, the two leaves to one another, these two middle leaves. So the question is, what if that one is split? Is that a problem? These two upper leaves that are found in the middle, in which, again, basically goes straight down to the shedra. So what's the din when it comes to that? So Rashi says, tiyomis lafi shemidubakim ketuumim. They're attached to one another just like twins. Maybe it means in utero. Okay, so Tashma. Di'omer, because I have twins and they're not dovuk. Tashma, Di'omer, Ramasayin, Rabbi Yochanan, different gears says, Omer Yeshua ben Levi, Nitla Tiyamis Puzzle. So it says explicitly that if the Tiyamis is severed, if it's cut off, if it's gone, then it's puzzle. So my love, Huadin Nechaka. Shouldn't be much of a difference if it's split. That should also be possible. Nitla Shani Deha Chasir. When you actually remove it, it's chaser, it's missing. So that's a lot worse than if it's split. So maybe if it's split, it's not a problem. Ikadiyam Amarav, in different gears, is Amarav Yochanan, Amarav Yeshua ben Levi, Nechka Hatayamis, Nasikami Shenitla Tayamis Puzzle. Actually, according to this, it's a Nasikami. He says, no, according to this, that it's definitely Nechka Hatayamis is also, that it's just as puzzle as Nitla. Because if it's split, it's like it's not there. Okay. Question TA12. Nitla or nechaka hatiyamis ma'adin. So we know nitla divya calls puzzle. Nechaka is different lashonis. Let's see how he writes it. Nitla puzzle. Nechla pluta b'gemara ihavi boya o vadi puzzle. This question, is it a shaila or is it definitely puzzle? Okay, different ways of reading this. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Biter. So Rabbi Yehuda says that, okay, fine, if it's tied up at the bottom, it's attached rather at the to the shed at the bottom, but it's spread out. So Rabbi Yehuda says you should tie it at the top. And some people, Al Pi Rush, homiletically say when it comes to a situation of a sudas preda is when someone who is beloved to you is leaving. So it's interesting, it's the same language. Some people it's parrot, like a mule, it's a whole other vort, but the comes from this language of this lulav, which is separated. It's attached at the bottom. So Yehuda says that if it's separated, you're supposed to tie it at the top. You should, even though you are parrot when you're separated, on one hand you should still realize you're still mechuber, you're still attached. Even when you're separated, you're still attached from the roots, from the beginning. So even if you leave from someone and you may not physically be there, but you still are mechuber, you still have that attachment. Yehuda says you should still tie to the top. You should still do something to be able to retain that relationship. Okay. Anyway, Yehuda says when it comes to this lulav, you should tie at the top. So he learns out, as we saw in yesterday's daf, they have to make sure to tie it at the top. Therefore, he says that if it opens up, you should tie it up. Okay. So kapos means tied up. Another question to Stam is, it doesn't say anywhere in Torah that you're supposed to take a lulav. It says you're supposed to take kapos tamarim, something which you tie up. So the question is, how do you know that's a lulav? Ema charusa. Maybe it's referring to this other type of a plant. No, be in a kapos v'leika. It has to be something that you could close together, and when it comes to the charusa, you can't. The ema ufsa. So maybe it's this other type of tree or plant. The kapas mechad ikaparud. V'hai kapas v'oim the oilam. It has to be something which has the potential to come apart that could be then tied together, which excludes this type of a plant in which it always is kofus. It cannot be, or we don't find it separated. The aim of kufra, maybe it's this kufra which could be separated and could come back together. However, it's some type of plant in which is not good for a person. So it has to be that it's referring to something in which brings you peace. However, these things are like Rashi says, kikaitzin, like thorns, v'yotzvehen uktzin, harbe, they come out, and because of that, it can cut your hands. So you're going to take something in which has thorns. The Torah is not going to require you to do that, because the Torah is not going to want you to take something which you potentially could hurt yourself, and therefore the lulav can't be something like the kufra. Amalei Rava Toisval Ravina, the Ema Tarti Kapi the Tamri. Okay, fine, it's supposed to come from a date palm tree, but maybe you're supposed to just take clusters of dates. No Kapus Ksib, which is Lashon 1, which is not taking many. So the Ema Chados to take one. Lahu Kaf Karile, says Rashi. Vachiksiv Kapois, Al Shin Kapois, it's referring to tying it up. Improve if it spreads out. The Lashon Zen Neufel El Al Ali Halula. It can only be talking about the leaves and not about the dates themselves. So we're not required to take the actual dates because that's obviously something in which is not part of the definition of what the pasuk is requiring. Okay. Sini Har Barzil Kshera. So let's see the end of this Mishnah, again at the beginning of our parak, on Chav Tesamad Beis. It says that Sinihar Barzil or Ksheros. So these special types of lulavim that come from this place, so they're kosher. Says the Gemara, it has to be that the tip, the top of the bottom leaf has to be able to reach the side of the root of the next leaf. If they're so far apart, then that's not considered to be kosher. Tiny nami hachi, sinir barzil psula, I b'hanan tanan kshera. It's very similar lashons as we saw before. Chaytik begadish lasas sukkah and the sukkah. So we said it depends on neshach shiva. Okay, very similar language of how this Gemara goes. So again, it must be the way we could for this steer as we continue Lamed Beis and Beis is whether or not those leaves are able to reach the other ones. If not, then it's possible. If so, then it's fine. Some people ask it as a stira. It's not. Senior barzil is kash arba tani psul, so marbalu kasha. Kan rosh shel zeh migil stadi kor shel zeh. Kan shein rosh shel zeh migil stadi kor shel zeh. Fine. Omer Rav Miriam, Omer Rabbi Shimon Levi. The Omer Lansam say that it was Tani Rabba Bar Mori Mishum Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that it was said in the name of Yochanan ben Zakkai the following din. That Shnei Tamaris Yesh B'Geishel Hinam, there were these two date palm trees in Gay Ben Henam, which sounds like Gehenam, the oil Oshin Bibnehem, and smoke came up from them. Rashi says where, by the way, is the gateway to get to Gehenam. So Rashi says Samach Yerushalayim, close to Yerushalayim. We often find the holiest of things, there is the lowest of things as well. When you can reach very, very high, that's the place where you can also reach very, very low. So when it comes to Yerushalayim, anyone who is Samach Yerushalayim, it's shaykh that you could be by the Pesach of Gehenam. V'zehu sheshanu sinihar barzil ksheros, v'zuhi pischa shel Gehenam. So it's interesting, the use of the sinihar barzil, which is the lulav. The question is, why would you want to use such a thing, badavka? But it is acceptable, even though that is those are the trees that are actually connected to Gehenam. Of course, we know there's many drashos connected to the lulav and esrog is connected to the chet of Adam Harishon Eitz Hadas. Some people actually say that the Pri Eitz Hadar, the esrog, was the beautiful fruit that was consumed, that they were not, Chava and Adam were not allowed to eat, and therefore taking it is Rishon L'cheshman Avonos. So L'kachtam Lachem Yom Rishon is taking as a kapara the thing that you sin with, that you do a mitzvah with. So therefore it makes sense, maybe also the vort of taking the lulav, dafka from a place which is connected to Gehenna, is a way of being able to elevate, which is the purpose of this world, to elevate the lowest, seemingly lowest, more mundane, materialistic things to something more spiritual. Lulav sheish boy shloish tfachim. So it says the lulav has to be only 3 tfachim is the minimum. So Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel shir hadas v'arava shloisha. When it comes to the measurement of the hadas and the arava, that is 3 tfachim. And over here, seemingly disagreeing with our Mishnah, the lulav arba. The lulav is 4 tfachim. Kadeshi lulav yotzim in hadas tefach. The lulav, as of course we say the bracha on the tilas lulav. So therefore, we want the lulav to be a little bit bigger, so it should protrude a tefach above the hadas and the rava. But Rabbi Parnach Omer Rav Yochanan Shidra Shalul Sarach Shiatzim in Hadas Tefach. Not the very top of the leaf, but the actual shedra, the actual spine where everything is connected. That is supposed to be the minimum of 4 tefachim, 1 tefach above the hadas. Rav Parnach Omer Rav Yochanan Shidra Shalul Sarach Shehim in Hadas Tefach. So it says again the shedra. Not. So the question is, our Mishnah doesn't say that. Our Mishnah says lulav sheish gimel tefachim k'nei l'naneh kosher. All you need to do is to be able to take it. You can shake it. It's 3 tefachim. Whereas it says ema u k'nei l'naneh kosher. So it has to be 3 tefachim and the k'nei l'naneh. When you shake it, you're holding it with your hand. Your hand is a tefach. So therefore, the truth is, together with the 3 tefachim and your hand, which you're shaking, equals 4 tefachim. Market Islay. Whether it's talking about the entire lulav, including the leaves, or only the shedra, they would both say their own various opinions. Okay. Tashma. Shir hadas v'rava shloisha v'lulav arba. As we said, when it comes to the measurement of the hadas and the rava, it has to be at least 3 tefachim. However, the lulav is 4. So my lav b'hadi olin. L'char, it's including the leaves. No, lavad me'olin. So it's not necessarily a raya according to one sheet to the other, whether it's the olin or the shedra. Ufa. Let's get back to what we said before. Shir hadas v'rava shloish v'lulav arba. Now, Rav Tarfon has a completely different shita. He says, ba'alma bas chamish tefachim. When we talk about an alma, it has to be an alma which is a 5 tefach alma, which therefore, according to this, when we're talking about the size of tefachim, l'chayra, that makes it a much larger shear, because each tefach is larger than we typically think of as a 6 tefach amma. So Amar Rava Sharlei Marl Rav Tarfon. Hashem should forgive Rav Tarfon for coming up with making it so difficult to find hadastin aravos, which are so large. Hashda avay shleishel mishkachinan. It's hard to find when they're 3 tefachim as we know it. So bas chamisha miboy. Now he's mentioning 5. So kiyasa Rabdimi Omer. No. It doesn't mean 5 tefachim. It means Omer alma bas shish tefachim asa oisa bas chamisha. What he's saying is that we take an alma, which is bas shish tefachim, which is 6 tefachim, and we make it and divide it by 5. So therefore, instead of 6 tefachim, so we divide, and therefore each one is 1 tefach, 1 times 6. Instead, we will divide by 5. So therefore, it's 1 1/5, because 1 1/5 times 5 equals 6. So therefore, what he's actually saying is that the measurement of the Hadassah and the Rava actually has to be 1 1/5 times 3, which is 3 3/5, or 3.6. So Semehem Shleishel Hadassah Shalua. Kama Habil, how much is that? So Tlasa 3, Utlasa B'chumshi, 3 3/5. So Kasha the Shmuel. Halchalei Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel Shir Hadassah Rava Shleisha. He said that when it comes to the measurement, it has to be 3 tefachim only. Halach Rav Tarfon. Halach is like Rav Tarfon. Now the question is it 3.6 or is it 3? So where it says lo dak, what's the difference? He wasn't being precise when he said that it should be 3. So I'm reading lo dak, and this sounds a lot like the Gemara in Succah on Daf Ches regarding the round Sukkah. When do we say the words lo dak l'chumra? L'kul mi amrin lo dak? In other words, if the minimum requirement is 3.6, why would we tell people, yeah, just do 3? 3 is not big enough according to this shita. So Kiyas the Rabbi Omer, he says, no, you have to flip it around like this. Alma bas chamish tefachim asa oisa shisha. Actually, what you do is you take a 5 tefach alma and you will divide it by 6, and therefore each tefach is only 5/6. So therefore, if each tefach is really only 5/6 and not 1, right? So therefore you'll do 5/6 times 3, which ends up being 15/6, or 2 1/2. Semihem shloishal hadas v'shaluv, right? So kamehavahu treyu palga, 2 1/2. So sav kasha shmuel lo dak. So no, he said 3, but the truth is it doesn't have to be 3. It only has to be 2 1/2. What do you mean? How could you say something like that? You're allowed to say something like this because you're being lo dak l'chomra. Because the truth is you only need it to be 2 1/2. But he says you don't make it 3, so he rounds it up. But the truth is, if you did even 2 1/2, it would be fine. Question 11. So he said it's 4 tfachim. However, that's what I would have written, but I would have gotten it partially wrong. This is how he wants you to write it. 3 for the shedra and 1 tefach for the leaves. Another mandirma says dalid for the shedra and another tefach for the leaves. So it's interesting. Again, everyone holds that the shedra has to be 3 tefachim at least. The question is, can the 4th tefach be also, does it have to be the shedra? Or, it's different ways of reading this. Very interesting. He says 3 for the shedra and 1 more tefach for the olin, which is 4. Or maybe it means 4 for the shedra and you need an additional tefach for the olin, which again is not so pashut how that's how you read the Gemara, but that's how he says it. All right, let's see a little bit more. Hadas, and we'll continue with the dinim of hadas in tomorrow's daf. Let's just get to the Tana Rabbanan. Hadas goes of a yavish puzzle, just like the lulav. So too, when it comes to hadas, so if it's stolen or if it's dried out, it's puzzle. Shel sherish in the dachas puzzle, as we said, because this is the shera of the days of Yeshua, the days of Moshe. It has to be completely burnt. Niktam roisho, if it's completely snipped off at the top, or nifritzu olav, or the leaves are completely off. Oshahaya, here's a different piece. A naviv merubos ma'olav puzzle. If let's say there's more berries on the hadas than leaves, then it's puzzle. However, imiyutin kosher. If you want, you could remove those berries so that now you'll have more leaves than berries. However, the ein mamatin b'yomtiv. You're not allowed to do this on Yom Tov, because by removing those berries on Yom Tov, it's like you're being masakin mana. You're fixing a kli, and that cannot be done on Yom Tov, which we'll discuss more on tomorrow's daf. Tanabana. So just like we did by the lulav, we're now going to understand why do we say that when we're talking about Tanabana anaf eitz avos, that's referring to this mentioning of the arba minim of one of the 4 species, that this is referring to the hadas. So anaf eitz avos is 3, just like there's 3 letters in hadas. It's the easier way to remember that. She'anafav chayfin es eitzav. It's referring to where the leaves completely cover the stem. The eizahu havi armez hadas. We know hadas completely covers it up. So with the leaves, 3 of them covering them all the way up. So therefore, that's what it's referring to. Ve'ema zesa. Maybe it's an olive branch, which also has leaves like that. Beina avos v'leika says it needs to be this form of avos, in which Rashi says shekul anaf she'etz mechufa ba'olin, that all of the leaves cover up this branch. Like it goes all the way up. However, when it comes to the Zesa, Rashi says, Masa Sharshrois, like this chain, Shihu Morchavin Zel Zeh. So this is what it needs to look like, and that's what is lacking. It doesn't have that appearance of this chain, as we'll use that language again in the Gemara soon. So the Gemara says as follows: Be'inan enough of chayfavas eitzav aleika. 1 second. The ema duvla. So maybe it should be like this. Some say it's a chestnut tree. So it requires that the branches must cover the wood, and it doesn't. The ema hirduf, which is apparently some type of poisonous plant of sorts. So Rabbi, as we said before, Rabbi Omer Mahacha Hemes Vashalom Ohavoi, which Taisus on the previous moment discusses why do we not quote the pasuk of Emes Vashalom Ohavoi when it came to the question by the lulav, only when it comes to the hadas. By both of them we say Darchen Darchen Noam B'Leika. The question is why do we then also have another shita Emes Vashalom Ohavoi? Like what's wrong with Darchen Noam? Says Rashi, V'hai mivras boras as hayadayim ki kaitzim. Again, it's going to hurt your hand like thorns. Shrashi olav aisuin chadin kamachat. They're very sharp like needles. Tanrabanan. Kalua kimin kalia. If let's say it's all tied, the leaves are all just like tied. They're all connected. V'dama shal shelos, and it looks like a chain. Zehodas. So this is the way to be able to define that as a hadas. Rabbi Lezer and Yaakov Omer anaf eitz avos eitz shetam eitzu piri shava. Havi Omer zehadas. This is hard to understand, but apparently the branch or part of the tree tastes just like its eitz and its fruits. They have a similar taste. So the hadas, the myrtle, is really something in which has a nice aroma. It's not something which really has taste, as we know, but it has a similar taste, as it says. Tana, eitz avos kosher, shenu avos pasul. It has to be like a chain, if not it's pasul. So hechidami avos. So Rabbi Yehuda kaimi tlasa tarfi bikina. It has to be that there's 3 leaves on each nest. So again, there's levels. There's 3, then 3, then 3, and they go all the way up. So it has to be 3. Rav Kahana mafil trei v'chad. Even if it's 2 and 1, even if it's not 3, 2 and 1 is good enough. Rav Acha b'rei Rav Mahader a trei v'chad. He used to go after to try to find this. However, nothing but with Rav Kahana, because Rav Kahana said that it's acceptable, as we often find by the Succah. They use a Succah, or in this case also a hadas, which is questionable, but because someone says it's kosher, they want to show that this is the din, therefore they go after a particular thing. So Amrulay Marmar Maimer Lavashi Alba Lahu Hadas Shaita Korile. This is actually called a Hadas Shaita, which means it is apostle Hadas, and therefore it's actually probably not something which is kedai for you to be going after. Okay. Fine. We'll stop here, even though we're kind of like in the middle over here, but we have a ton of Rabbanon, so we'll continue with this same line of reasoning on tomorrow's daf. Let's see if we have any more questions. TA 13, no, TB 14, Adkan.